Okay, so this is a Luyuan 40cc pocket bike. And the issue I was having was it would only start after I pushed the prime fuel. Yeah, let's see if I can get a picture of the primer right there. Prime fuel into the carburetor, and I would see air bubbles transferring into the carburetor, which is a lean issue, which means air is getting into the carburetor through the fuel lines. And that means there's a fuel line leak. So when you have fuel or air going into the fuel lines, you would push the primer to prime fuel into the carburetor. It would suck air into the carburetor, and it would run for about a good 5 seconds. If you throttle it, it would still die out. Give it a little throttle, a little air, it would still die out. So you would have to prime it again, and then you would start it and it would run for 5 seconds. And what you could do to help test that theory is that while it's running for that 5 seconds, you could just keep priming more fuel into the carburetor, which will keep it running, but eventually it's going to die out again. So what we're going to do is take the top shell off. It's basically these 4 bolts right here, this, and as the plastic piece comes off, you're going to have to take the fuel cap off. So we'll get to that point right now. Okay, so we took the 4 seat bolts off, and we got one up here, a little screwdriver bolt that comes out. So all you gotta do is take the fuel cap off, and voila. Now our problem was these had deteriorated, and I'll show you a picture pretty soon. So these were the original fuel lines, and they kind of go into here. It's a little grommet, 2-hole grommet. Then you have one about 4.5 centimeters going in, and then the other one is at 12 centimeters coming in. And the longer one, you'll have a little fuel filter right there. So I changed mine to a red fuel hose, which you could get like at any auto parts store. I think I got this one. I think O'Reilly's was out, so I went to Ace Hardware. But make sure it's fuel line. Don't let them try to sell you vacuum lines, rubber lines, basically, because those don't do too good. Continuously exposed to petroleum products like gasoline. So these went here basically, and then they deteriorated inside the grommet, so you couldn't see it. So it was sucking in air from the fuel tank. And here's some pieces of it that had come apart. So if you look, your longer one, which has your fuel filter, comes around, goes down, and goes to the bottom connection on your carburetor. That's the one that's sticking straight down. And the shorter one goes down, and then that goes to your upper connection on your carburetor, which is the one that's kind of slanted at a 45-degree angle. So if you want to go ahead and replace those, pretty easy. The way you would get the fuel lines off is you just give it a little tug in the direction it's coming off of, and then get a flathead screwdriver and just kind of pry it off at the same time. So as you give it a tug, you're kind of pushing with your screwdriver it to slide off. If you just pull it, it's gonna come apart. Or you might tear the fuel line, really. So yeah, after that's done, you just put it all back together. And I mean, as you can see, there's a little bit fuel air in there, but that should disappear. One of the biggest giveaways that you're having that problem is you'll see multiple bubbles through here. Right now it's all fuel, but Thank God they have clear lines, so you could actually see air bubbles getting sucked in. As after you prime it, it's just priming in fuel and air. So the fuel line I have is a 1/4 inch outside diameter by 7/64 inside diameter, which is basically 1/8 inside diameter, which is relatively small. The outside has to be a 1/4 inch outside diameter because it's got to fit inside the grommet that goes inside the gas tank. And if you want to stretch it out, I mean, I recommend just getting a pair of needle nose pliers, and then what you could do is separate them and squish it down some more, because you're going to need some type of technique to squeeze over the fittings on the carburetor and the fitting on the fuel filter. You could apply a little heat on it with the lighter. Just be careful not to burn it, and of course be careful when working with the heat source and gasoline. So just to address a common problem that I had to go around was that these are threaded. So originally they were threaded. So you get your bolt, which is a 6M metric, and it used to thread into here. But those threads, they stripped out, so it took a while for me to get the seat off. And instead what I did was I drilled them out, drilled all the thread out. So now I have a bolt that goes through, and I have a nut on the other side.